Hey everybody, and welcome to Ramchat. I'm Erin Crew, Director of Communications, Marketing, and Media, and I have with us today our entire suite of 5th and 6th grade principals. Mrs. Neneviller, our building principal, 567, Dr. Koch, our 5th grade principal, and Mr. Letty, our 6th grade principal, right below me here in the chat boxes, or maybe he's over there, I can't really tell anymore. Welcome everybody to Ramchat.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. So this week at our school board meeting, we learned of the plans for K through 6 return to school for in-person and virtual learning.
Yay, we're coming back.
I know, it's so exciting.
Very exciting.
Thinking about celebrating, we're going to get to celebrate our second first day of school with kids this year, which is so unique and it's so exciting. We already have the second first day of school signs ready to go, and come November 12th, we will be welcoming as many people back as would like to come back, which is nice. Parents do have an option. If they're comfortable staying home, they can stay home. If they're comfortable coming to school, they can come to school. And our third option as well, as always, we have Spring Forward Cyber Learning.
Yep.
So let's talk about what in-person learning will look like in your building in 5th and 6th grade.
Okay, so first of all, we have our students right now, they're MAP testing. So far we have run through that. It was our way of kind of getting some of the kids into the building. We've taught them how they were going to stand in lines. They've already kind of seen the circles that we're going to kind of use for some social distancing, because when we are bringing so many students back at the same time, not every area of our building is going to be social distance, but we're going to try as best as we can to put some of the recommendations into place so that we are looking out for our safety of our students in this environment. So we have taught them to kind of walk in lines. You kind of put your hand in front of you and make sure that you are about an arm's length distance from that person. And then we will be walking through the hallways for our MAP testing for ELA. We were able to bring only 10 in at a time. So especially for our 5th grade who have not even been in the building, we had some teachers doing tours and things of that nature. So in those small group settings, we can do certain things like that. When the kids come back for their MAP testing again for math, that test is much shorter. So we are planning some transition activities for them as they come back into the building for those small groups, because you're only working with 40 students of a grade level at a time. So we're going to be able to show them where their classroom is, walk the halls with them, and make sure that they understand, because when they do come off the bus the very first day, we are using our cafeteria is set up to be social distance for when they go to eat lunch. So there is single desks right now, and then our gymnasium will also be set up. Our main big gym will also be set up as a cafeteria. So we won't have our normal 2 spots that usually when the kids, 6th grade, you remember, you came in the first day and you went to the cafeteria and you all sat, you came down, they met you, then they took you to class. So we're not going to have that ability this time, which is fine. That's why we want to make sure that we are transitioning all the students during the MAP testing. Those of them are coming in, and we have about 90% of the kids signed up and coming in. So we will get a majority of those students, and then they'll be able to do that kind of first piece that we've normally done, you know, a little bit ahead of time. And then they will go into their classrooms. The classroom desks will be lined up, all facing the smart board. They'll all be facing one way. They will be in lines, and they will have some space in between them. And then Dr. Koch, why don't you talk about what our mask break will look like inside of a classroom?
Sure. Mask breaks, students can have a mask break for about a minute, a little more maybe, if needed. In the back of the room, there'll be an area that's sectioned off. We call it our mask break box. And so you get to take off your mask. There will be a circular disc right in the center of the box, and you get to stand there so you know that you're safely away from everyone else, which is at least 6 feet. And you're not going to be outside, but you'll still be able to be close enough, supervised, and then you can get right back into your classwork when you feel comfortable, within a minute or 2.
Right, and it's a great way to just take that little break without having to miss any instruction. You're not disturbing anyone because you're in the back of the room and everyone's facing forward. So you're not really going to disturb anyone. And then, Mr. Letty, why don't you talk about, so that was mask breaks, why don't we talk about bathroom breaks?
Thank you. Bathroom breaks are going to be a little different than before. We are having a maximum of 3 students allowed in the bathroom. And we're going to try to social distance in there as well, with having some of the facilities shut off for them. And they will be signing out and signing in just as usual.
Yep. And then what about water bottles? Mr. Lenny, why don't you just continue with water bottles?
Sure. Water bottles, we are allowing students to bring in bottles from home that can be refilled. We have several refilling stations throughout the building. Our water fountains will, however, be turned off. We are not going to allow students to use those water fountains for obvious reasons.
So we do encourage you to bring your own water bottle, and then you can refill it. Those refillable stations are down at lunch. So when you go to lunch, you'll be able to refill that during the day. And our classrooms, right now, we do a little bit of switching in the 5th and 6th, but not a lot, but definitely more than K-4. But we're going to kind of minimize those switches. So now that you are in the classroom, you will stay within your homeroom classroom for all of your major content areas, and your teachers will switch if you switch to their rooms. And then you will walk to your special. So we'll have one-way hallways. So everybody will kind of be moving the same direction because our building is set up that way. Our building is able to do that because we're a big square. In most of our hallways, we're a big square. So we're going to be able to move in that certain direction, and then so that way you'll have a little break from the classroom and you'll be able to go to your special, as well as you'll be able to also go, obviously, to lunch. We'll be eating in the cafeteria where we are social distance. We talked about that 5, 6, K-4 will have recess, and 5, 6 would not have recess. So Dr. Koch, why don't you talk a little bit about what our recess, non-recess will look like?
Well, recess is what is now going to be called activity time. And each class will have a time period throughout the day. 15 minutes will be given, and you'll be outside and you'll actually have an activity for the day that you and your teacher can work together and hopefully have a lot of fun participating together in those activities. So you'll get outside, and if you're, thinking about it, here's a chance for a 15-minute mass break. If you so desire and you're 6 feet away, it's a chance to have a lot of fun as well as being outside and, participating in the activity. So hopefully, you get back here. It's not called recess, but it's activity time.
Right, and we're not calling it recess because our typical recess would be almost 200 students in one location at a time, and it's a very small playground, quite honestly, for 200 people. So we are designating 8 areas kind of around the building that will be those kind of activity areas so that we can split for the contact tracing pieces. We don't want to mix our classes together. So we want to try to make sure that we separate them as much as possible in every activity that we are doing. That's why, as a team, you will only ever be your own, as teams are only in one hallway. Teams will only eat lunch together during the activity time, and during the day, class will only be together, and then the class will move to this activity time together. So that way the contact tracing part is a little bit easier for us because we're trying to limit that movement. Okay, and then for materials, one of the things we do encourage and are requesting that you have all your, your pencil box, your own pencil box. We're not going to be sharing materials like that. Those are things that you need to bring, scissors and things of that nature. So just make sure that everything you're kind of using right now in the virtual world, that you're bringing that to school in a nice little pencil box, because that's going to be your tools that you will only be allowed to use. Now, there are some classes that we have textbooks, and those textbooks are kind of shared between 2 groups. So we will be kind of wiping those textbooks down, the covers of them, and we'll be kind of taking them back and forth. But that will be the very, very limited that we are sharing those types of materials, and it's only on a needs basis to do that. We are not passing around a lot of things as we go into, as we go into our learning environment. We have all over our building right now, we have hand sanitizers. They're everywhere. They're in the lobby, they're in the classrooms. So the expectation will be you're going to come off the bus, you're going to enter your classroom, you're going to hand sanitize immediately as soon as you get in there. And kind of anytime you enter that classroom, you're going to hand sanitize and make sure, or wash your hands depending on, the break times during the day, that you are making sure that we continuously are washing our hands and making sure that we, kind of all the germs are kind of killed as we are moving around the building. So our maintenance staff has been wonderful because we do have students back right now. And, our maintenance staff has been great. They're cleaning, throughout the day. They clean our cafeteria and make sure that after every group comes in, that is going to be done. And we will be continuing to do that as we move from our cafeteria and our gymnasium, both of them being used as cafeterias. So, it is something that they, throughout the day, they clean, different kind of hot spots, things that are touched a lot. So they will clean that throughout the day as well. So the cleaning has been but as we hand sanitize, that will also help with all of that as well.
Mr. Letty, can you explain to us what the new transportation process will look like for students this year?
Yeah, well, with our busing transportation and the regulations on the busing, we understand that some parents are going to be concerned and they're going to switch from being a bused household to maybe a parent drop-off and parent pickup. So with those increased numbers, we are formulating a plan right now to adjust our parent pickup and parent drop-off or student drop-off to reflect that increase in number. So we will be releasing and sending out notification once that plan is formalized to all parents here at the 5-6 school building.
Right, and some of the things that we're putting into consideration is because we are a very large building, and we understand that most parents, when they're dropping their children off to work, are trying to get to work. And if you've ever been in one of our lines here, sometimes it can get a little long and sometimes it can get a little timely. So we do ask for your patience, but we are putting that into consideration to try to figure out the most efficient and obviously, number one, safest way to get students in and get students out of the building. So just be patient with us, but that plan will be coming out probably the week before school starts.
So let's say a kid hops out of mom's car, starts to run into the building, and oh my gosh, left the mask in the car, mom's gone. Will we have masks out front? Will we have masks available for kids to use? I know we have so much PPE at this point. Mr. Chief Boyer, our school police officer, he has updated us a lot on all of the PPE. So will we have that available for kids?
Well, luckily, we actually have Chief Boyer, who is a resident of our building, which is great. So all that PPE is actually housed right here. So we have plenty of PPE. So in every single door and entry that the students would be entering into, there will be boxes of masks. So a student will never enter our building without having a mask on. We can provide that for them if they have forgotten. Obviously, we can't provide that every day, but on a forgetful day, we're good, and we can definitely provide them a mask. Yep.
And just to be clear, you're not keeping all the PPE. It's just being stored there right now.
Correct.
So we don't want it to get out there that 5-6 is hoarding all the PPE. You guys are going to share it. You're just
we will share it. Okay. It's just stored here. It gets shipped out to where it needs to go. But
okay, good.
At least it starts here.
We will be taking masks off when we eat lunch. We'll get down to the cafeteria, we'll have our food, we'll sit down, we'll take our masks off, and we'll eat. What is lunch going to look like in terms of food service, though, in your building?
Right. So like I said before, we will be socially distanced in lunch. Our lunchroom is all set up so that students are the adequate amount of space in between each other so that when they do sit, they will be able to take their masks off. And then for our lunches, you will be getting a lunch menu like you normally do. But it will be a grab and go. So you will kind of see that it is going to be very limited choices. It's not going to be the choices that we used to have because we are trying to make sure that students are not taking their time in line. It's because when when you're kind of standing there, our lines can get a little long. So it is going to be very quick. You grab it, you go have a seat. And if you have packed your lunch that day, then you would just have a seat and you would eat your lunch. We will be having assigned sections of the lunchroom. So your class will be sitting in the same section of the lunchroom every single day. Eventually, we will then get to assign seats, and that will be your seat. We're going to allow the kids to kind of come in the first couple of days, kind of get their feet wet and kind of figure out the ins and outs of the building. And then once they figure out kind of how their class is sitting, they'll be able to say, okay, well, I want to sit next to this person because all the chairs are faced the exact same direction. So if you want to kind of chit chat with your friend a little bit, that person's going to need to sit on the right or the left of you. So because we're obviously not going to encourage students to turn around. We want everybody facing the front direction. So they will be able to have their section, eat with their classmates from their homeroom, and then they'll figure it out that if I stand in line a certain way, this person will be to my right and this person will be to my left and we're good to go. So that's kind of how that will be. And then breakfast also will still be offered, and it is also a grab and go as well. And they could eat in the morning, also socially distanced in the cafeteria.
I was going to say, while the lunches will be limited, it's still going to be really tasty. I've had some samples from Aramark. They are definitely still keeping up with their flavor game and making sure that it's still a nice, well-rounded lunch. It's just maybe not quite as many options as we had before.
Right. But and the best part is it's actually going to be free for the entire rest of this calendar year. So to December 31st, actually till we go for our break, for our winter break, lunches and breakfast for everyone will be free. So that's a bonus.
Dr. Koch, we also have for parents to complete at home, just sort of review before they send their kids into school, a daily COVID checklist. Can you tell us a little bit about what the parent expectation will be as they return to school?
Hopefully that checklist is probably hanging on your refrigerator. So each morning when you're ready to take your child to school or usher them out to the bus stop, you're looking at it and saying no to each one of those categories. Does your child have a fever? No. Has your child been in contact with anyone that, possibly could have COVID symptoms or experience any illnesses? No. We want your children here, but we want them here healthy. We want them to feel good, for you to feel comfortable that they're here and everyone is safe. If at any time you answer yes to those questions, please keep your child home. We understand that sometimes there's a fever, sometimes there's an illness going around, and it's not COVID. But still, you need to keep your child home just to make sure that they're feeling good, that they're feeling safe, and that, when everyone's here, they're going to be healthy. So use that checklist.
We've covered a lot of in-person information. Let's talk now about our virtual option, because again, we do have those three options: in-person, virtual, and Springford Cyber Learning. Let's focus though on virtual right now. Mrs. Neneville, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, so we are creating a dedicated virtual for all of our families who are not quite ready to send their students back to school yet. And so this will run, as of right now, it's going to run until the end of the second quarter. Obviously, we will be looking at the matrix. We will be looking at everything that is going on with COVID at that time, and we will reevaluate as we get closer to the second quarter. But this is what we're doing for second quarter for those families that just don't feel comfortable right now. And what that will entail is we will have teachers from our building that will then be assigned to be a virtual teacher. At that point, you may or may not have a teacher change. So whether you're going to decide to go virtual, you may have a different teacher than the one that you have right now because your teacher may not be chosen to do virtual. Also, if you come to the building live, you may also have a different teacher because if your teacher was chosen to be virtual, now you may be dispersed between other teachers in the building. So we want to make sure that you do understand that there is a possibility, and in this building, there might be a very big possibility that your teacher would change, because even the pre-survey that we saw, there was a good portion of our students, about 20% of our students at that moment, that were looking to do the virtual option. So when I kind of did that and ran the numbers, our class sizes will basically remain the same that they are now, which is anywhere between 24 and 28. When I go ahead and assign those virtual teachers and go ahead and reshift people. So that's about what our class size will be, is anywhere between 24 and 28. And then those students will work with those teachers. They will follow the same bell schedule that we have here in the building. So they'll continue to follow and do that as well. And then all of our specials for them, because our specialists will be teaching here within the building, our specials for the virtual students will be asynchronous at that point. So you will still use Canvas, and the teachers will be still putting assignments up on a daily basis for you. So when so say it's a day 2 and you're supposed to have, health on a day 2, then you would go into your Canvas page during your time for specials. When you click on health, then you will see your health lesson for that day. Okay, so that is how that would work. But then all of your other classes, your math, your ELA, your science, your social studies, those classes would be live. So you would have your own dedicated virtual teachers, and you would have that live, just like the students that are here.
So we have had some questions come in from parents about the dedicated teacher model, both parents who are interested in remaining virtual, as well as parents who are interested in coming back into the building. One question has come in, if I love my teacher, let's say I love Mrs. Ames, and she opts to become a virtual teacher, should I then decide to become a virtual student to ensure I stay with Mrs. Ames? It gets a little tricky there, doesn't it?
It does get a little tricky, and quite honestly, we cannot guarantee that, because with so many students that are going virtual, like I said, we would be choosing possibly 4 teachers, possibly 6 teachers. We move in pairs of teachers. So we have a teacher that teaches math and science. We have a teacher that teaches ELA and social studies. So depending on how many people want to go into virtual will depend on how many teachers will be teaching it. So I can't even guarantee you at that, even if Ms. Ames is a virtual teacher and you're okay going either way, I can't even guarantee you that you would get Ms. Ames, because there are so many other teachers that will be also available for the virtual. They're not teaching all the virtual students, because you really can't have one teacher teaching 100 kids. That would be a little difficult.
Mm-hmm. And the difference between, again, virtual and Springford Cyber, which does have a larger class size, is that Springford Cyber is asynchronous. What we're doing here is still live virtual learning, virtual teaching with those dedicated teachers. So that's why we're still aiming to keep class sizes limited, even though we'll be virtual.
Exactly, because there will still be grading, live grading. There will still be all of these things that basically you'd be able to get within the.
At the end of this session, I'm going to bring in our school nurses to explain the process of contact tracing, close contact, what all of that means, that real technical part about what will happen when we have a confirmed case of COVID within our schools. But can we talk about a little bit what's going to happen for families if their student is home quarantined, whether they're sick or healthy, because it is entirely possible that we'll have kids out of school and they're still healthy. So how will they continue to learn from home in these situations?
So, and we do understand that. And our biggest goal is to make sure that the student still feels connected to their classroom, because we know that this has been a lot of change, especially for our 5th grade, who have, they're coming from 7 different buildings, and we really haven't had a really good transition like we normally do. So we're being very sensitive to those needs. And so one of the things that I have talked to the teachers, I actually talked to them this past week, in our faculty meeting, is about the fact that even though we're going to have a virtual school and it's a dedicated virtual school, it is still basically a different school. It has a different setup. So it may not run, just like your class may not run exactly like the person next to you's class is running and at the same time. So we're going to try to make sure that if a student is needing to stay home for a certain amount of time, that they would still stay connected with their homeroom and their switch class. They would use Canvas in order to do that. The teachers would, post videos for them. They would continue. They would probably be working asynchronous because we don't do live streaming here at the 5-6, but they would work asynchronous, kind of like how we did from March to June, but just for that short period of time. And there would be times the teacher would be reaching out. The teacher would make sure that they're checking in with the student live and talking with them as they are home when available. Now, if it becomes a longer period of time, if the situation is to a point where they are going to miss maybe 24 days or something of that nature, then we may want to consider our other options and possibly move that student to the virtual, dedicated virtual classroom at that point. But we will try our very best to do exactly what we would do if a student, went skiing on a ski vacation before, all this happened. We still sent work home. We still did things on our websites to have that student be a part of our classroom. So we're going to continue to do that regardless of the reason why they're home. But if it does become an extended time, we also know we do have the dedicated virtual that we could use as an option if needed.
And if they are home, obviously in any quarantine situation, if it's something that the school and the nurses have been in contact with families about, we will know that our kids are home for that reason. But if a student is home for any reason, they do still need to call the attendance line. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. And we have that all set up where you would just call the main office and you push the button of the exact grade level that you need, and then you would leave that message.
Mm-hmm. So great, let's have our nurses come on and really get into the specifics of how they will be working with families throughout this process.
So as part of the COVID-19 task force, the nurses have had meetings with Michelle Masters, who we all met today. Thank you, Michelle. She's encouraged our assignment of a few COVID liaisons in our district who streamline the reopening process of positive COVID cases in our school. The Springford liaisons report directly to Michelle or to one of the two other directors for guidance with each individual case. While the roles of the Springford COVID liaisons differ from those from the Department of Health, like we heard from Michelle today, the two collaborate together to best prevent the spread of infections through our schools. We currently have 3 COVID liaisons at Springford: Nurse Erin Lewandowski at the elementary level, Nurse Jacqueline Gospodarek at the secondary level, and Athletic Director Mickey McDaniels for our after-hours notifications. The system they have developed has proven to be efficient thus far, and they will continue to evolve the process as needed. So, what happens when somebody gets ill at school? Once a nurse is notified of an ill student at school, she will meet the student in a triage area to assess for symptoms of COVID-19. The Department of Health has provided all school nurses with an algorithm, which is shown on the screen, to assist in determining whether or not the student should be excluded from school. This algorithm will be used in addition to the current standing orders from our district physicians. If a student or staff member presents with 2 of the top symptoms under the first bullet, or one of the bottom symptoms under the second bullet, the Springford nurse will comply with their recommendations to separate the ill person from the general population. Each building has a designated area for the care of a symptomatic person, which we have termed the Health Annex. This area will separate ill persons from any high-risk students or staff members in the building until the ill person can be taken home. Students going home from the Health Annex will be brought out to their parents through a designated exit door. We will request that parents not enter the building for pickup. So when can a student who gets sent home return? In order to return after being sent home through the Health Annex, which means that you are exhibiting symptoms of COVID, one of 3 scenarios must occur. First, the ill person tests negative for a COVID test. Once the test is negative, if that person has improved symptoms and has no fever, you'll notice the term afebrile on the slide. That means without a fever. So improved symptoms, no fever for the past 24 hours without fever-reducing medicine, and has tested negative, that person is ready to end quarantine and can return to school. The second scenario, if the ill person does not take the COVID test or tests positive, the person must isolate at home for 10 days after the onset of symptoms. Once that isolation period is over and the symptoms have improved and there's no fever for 24 hours with no fever-reducing medicine, that person is ready to end quarantine and can return to school. The third scenario is a little different. The ill person has a documented medical condition with an individualized health plan that the physician determines is the cause of the excluding symptom. This is called a differential diagnosis, which is listed up there. For instance, if a student with asthma presents with cough and difficulty breathing, the nurse will complete an assessment and follow the student's individual health plan for treatment, which may include the use of an emergency inhaler. If the student improves after treatment and does not exhibit any other COVID-related symptoms, this student can remain at school. He has a documented differential diagnosis of asthma that explains his symptoms, and the treatment plan has worked. If the same student does not improve after the use of his emergency inhaler, he may be sent home for his asthma, perhaps to use his nebulizer at home. If symptoms improve, this student can return to school the next day because, again, he is not exhibiting signs of COVID. He has a documented differential diagnosis that caused his symptoms. However, if this very same student presents with a cough, difficulty breathing, and a fever, The student would be sent to the health annex and required to follow the guidelines seen here for quarantine. The reason is that fever is not a typical symptom of asthma, so the differential diagnosis does not apply. It's important to realize that a cold is not a differential diagnosis, nor is a stomach bug. A differential diagnosis must be documented as a health condition in the student's health record in order to be used as a return to school option. Now, there may be a situation where a student has an illness that requires being sent home, but is not necessarily indicative of COVID-19. For instance, a student presents with a fever greater than 100.4. The student has no other symptoms on the COVID list. We will send the student home ill based on our doctor's orders, but not as a COVID quarantine. Fever was one of those symptoms that requires 2 or more to quarantine for COVID. So provided that no other symptoms evolve, this student is allowed to return to school once he's fever-free for 24 hours without fever-reducing medicine. As you can see, there's many factors to consider with each person that presents ill at school. In each instance, the school nurse will use her assessment skills, she'll use the medical background and health history of the ill person, and the COVID guidelines for exclusion to determine how to best exclude from and return to school. So what happens when someone is diagnosed with COVID? Typically, a person will not be in school when they test positive because quarantine is required while waiting for test results. So when we hear that a person is COVID positive, our Spring Forward COVID liaisons need to collect certain information to provide to the local health department. The purpose of this is to determine what is called the incubation period or the infectious period of the positive case, which Michelle did talk to a little bit today. The incubation period is the time between exposure to an infection and the first appearance of symptoms. We know that with COVID-19, a person in this pre-symptomatic period can still spread the infection to others. So calculating the probable days of being infectious will help us determine if anyone else at Springford was potentially exposed. Meanwhile, the positive case must now isolate at home, but the end date for her isolation is dependent upon whether or not she has symptoms. And I do have the right slide up. Good, I wanted to make sure. As you can see on this slide, a person with symptoms and a positive test result can return 10 days after the start of symptoms, as long as fever and the symptoms have resolved. The test date in this case does not matter as far as the end of isolation date is. Again, the presence of symptoms tells us that this person is probably already 2 to 5 days into the incubation period once the test was collected. So they're already working their way through the infectious stage of their virus. On the other hand, a positive case with no symptoms must wait a full 10 days after the PCR test is collected, due to the fact that we are unable to assume how far along that person is in his ability to spread the virus to others. A positive case in our district will be contacted by the nurse or the Springford COVID liaison and by the local health department. We will work together to help with the isolation rules, so no one needs to figure this out by themselves. What happens to a close contact? First of all, a close contact is anyone who was within 6 feet of an infected person for more than 15 minutes with or without a mask. Because of the incubation period and the possibility that COVID was being spread prior to us even knowing that anyone was sick, we must include any contact that occurred up to 48 hours prior to the positive person's symptoms. This is the reason that it's so important for us to have seating charts whenever possible and to remain in cohorts at school. The Springford COVID liaison must work with the local health department to identify which students spent time within 6 feet of the positive case in every classroom, on the bus, and in any Springford-related extracurricular activities, anywhere that we cannot maintain physical distancing. Since in this plan, Springford is not able to guarantee social distancing, There will be significant numbers of close contacts for each positive case. These close contacts must be quarantined for 14 days. This quarantine period begins on the last date of exposure to the COVID positive individual. At this time, the Pennsylvania Department of Health recommends that all close contacts take a COVID test during their quarantine, but it's important to realize that a negative COVID test will not shorten the quarantine time for a close contact. Again, due to that incubation period of the virus, and since we know that the close contact was indeed exposed to the virus, we must allow the full 14 days to ensure that he doesn't become positive and then spread the virus further in our schools. Because of the complexity of contact tracing and the ease with which COVID is able to spread, we urge all students and staff members to stay home if you're not feeling well. If you remain home with new symptoms of an illness and improve on your own, you can return to school. But if you come into a building with symptoms of COVID and the school nurse has to send you out, one, you're potentially risking the health and safety of others in the building, and two, you're now required to quarantine until you have met one of those guidelines set by the Department of Health. So who gets notified at Springford of a positive COVID case? A member of the Springford COVID task force will work directly with anyone who tests positive and anyone who must quarantine as a close contact. The local health department will also be in touch, as we said, for assistance with contact tracing. In compliance with confidentiality and privacy rights based on HIPAA and FERPA, a person's private health information will not be discussed with anyone else. Unless you are notified to be a close contact of a positive case, please do not ask your building nurse, your principal, or any member of the COVID task force for the personal health information of anyone else. However, the Springford Area School District does have a plan in place to keep the public notified of the level of COVID-19 spread in our community.
Springford will share COVID-related information and educational resources each Monday with an updated level of community transmission for both Montgomery and Chester counties, the number of confirmed cases in our school, and the total number of confirmed cases in the Springford footprint. Families should not expect to receive school-specific information unless they have direct contact with a confirmed case. In this sample, we see that the Springford School District 7-day update includes an overview of the entire number of cases in the school district and not at a specific building level. Individuals identified as being in direct contact with somebody will be directed to quarantine. Information will be sent to these families directly from the COVID task force. Thanks, everybody.
Great.